17. That's the number of years the Assassin's Creed series has been around for. It's a crazy number, right? What's even more baffling is that we have upcoming Assassin's Creed games that we know of, including Assassin's Creed Red, Hexe, Infinity, some remakes and a few others. Because of this, it's likely that Ubisoft has either forgotten or completely dropped some storylines in the past games. Really, those two things are pretty much the same. So what I want to do in this video is go over 5 Assassin's Creed storylines that were simply just forgotten or abandoned. Some of these storylines you definitely remember, but that's unfortunately not the case for Ubisoft themselves. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Do you remember the first time you booted up Assassin's Creed Unity and then you were presented with this screen? I remember the first time I saw this and I thought we'd get to play all of these Abstergo games within Assassin's Creed Unity, and oh boy was I wrong. Instead, the only available option that we can select is the Tragedy of Jacques de Molay. Now this specific game, or whatever it is pretty cool. The idea of being able to experience the fall of the last ever Grandmaster of the Knights Templar, executed in 1314, was one of the more interesting concepts that the franchise has ever delved into. But what about all of the other Helix games that were presented to us? It certainly does seem like Ubisoft has abandoned or just forgotten about this cool idea. Now what a lot of people don't know is that a majority of these Helix games we've already explored in past Assassin's Creed games. The Triumph of the Borgias is of course Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, The Lone Eagle is Assassin's Creed 3, or Assassin's Creed Forsaken that depicts the life of Haytham Kenway, The Murder in the Levant is Assassin's Creed 1, The Emperor's Shadow is Assassin's Creed Chronicles China, Fear and Loathing in Florence is Assassin's Creed 2, Washington and the Wolf is Assassin's Creed 3, or possibly The Tyranny of King Washington DLC, The Liberation of Lady Aveline is Assassin's Creed Liberation, and The Devils of the Caribbean is of course Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Now these last 3 are a mystery. It certainly seems like Ubisoft has either just forgotten about these 3 or abandoned it entirely. Maybe they simply just discontinued Assassin's Creed games, or maybe these games are ones we don't yet know about. But after doing some research, I've managed to depict what these 3 possible Helix games represent. So the Bladed Cross represents an unidentified Roman assassin that operated during the Roman Empire during the rise of Constantine I. It's said that this specific Roman assassin stood alongside Constantine and witnessed the entire birth of Constantinople. As for the Jazz Age Junkies, which is a very strange name, this represents an unidentified American assassin in the 1920s that operated during the Jazz Age. Now this is a strange one to me, because the Jazz Age was a period that was full of jazz music and dance styles in the 1920s and 30s, and the fact that Assassin's Creed could have or could perhaps one day delve into this era is certainly strange. And the final Helix game is titled Hell in Hibernia, and out of the 3, this one is my favourite. It basically depicts an Irish assassin that operated in Ireland during the country's War of Independence from 1919 to 1921, and it said that this specific assassin fought in the Irish War of Independence as a member of the IRA against the British. So yeah, those are the 3 mysterious Helix games. As I mentioned earlier, it is a shame that this aspect is just forgotten about by Ubisoft, as it could lead to some pretty interesting concepts for Assassin's Creed. Okay, so this one is obviously going to contain spoilers for the ending of Assassin's Creed Rogue and Unity. So if you played Assassin's Creed Rogue and you made it to the ending, you'd remember that Shay infiltrated the palace of Versailles and assassinated Charles Dorian, who is of course the father of Arno Dorian in the game after being Assassin's Creed Unity. And since that happened, what made the most sense is for Arno to of course hunt down Shay in his respective game. The idea of this happening was more of a fan-fueled speculation that emerged due to the overlapping timelines and even the geographical settings of the 2 games. However, this storyline simply was not a thing. In fact, I can say that Ubisoft simply just abandoned this plot to focus more on Arno and Elise's relationship. I mean, to be fair, Arno did have no clue who killed his father, so without him knowing the identity of the killer, the speculated storyline does not really make sense in that regard. But it's not like you couldn't have asked around, right? Initially in Assassin's Creed Unity, the game keeps Arno's father's death in the forefront of your mind. However, once Arno's guardian Francois de la Sey is murdered, the plot shifts entirely to focus on this new tragedy, leading Arno to uncover a Templar conspiracy behind de la Sey's murder. While Arno's father is occasionally mentioned, there is no substantial investigation into his death, and Arno himself shows little interest in discovering more. Now personally, I would have loved to see Arno hunt down the assassin killer himself in his respective game, as to me that sounds more interesting than Francois Damas Germain. While it is a possibility that Arno may have conducted some off-screen investigation into his father's death, this is not shown or hinted at in the game or any canonical material. I guess the real reason Arno did not hunt Shay is closely tied to his own story and growth in the game. He was more focused on Delacier's death because it happened more recently and it reminded him of his past failures, motivating him to seek redemption. Arno probably didn't remember much about his father, and by the time he could have done something, it was too late to change the past. There's also the fact that throughout Assassin's Creed Unity, Arno is preoccupied with protecting Elise, trying to avoid making another mistake that could harm her. And also by the end of the game and its DLC, it's clear that Arno has moved on, and he feels like he has redeemed himself. I guess the repair of his father's watch symbolizes that he has come to terms with his past, and he no longer dwells on his mistakes. I put out this poll quite recently, asking if Arno hunting down Shay is a better storyline than what we currently have, and just take a look at the results. It's quite evident that the majority of people would have preferred this storyline. So what do you think about this forgotten storyline? Would you have preferred Assassin's Creed Unity to focus on Arno hunting down Shay, or are you just simply happy with what we currently have? Let me know down in the comments below. The Observatory was such an important but relatively underexplored concept in the Assassin's Creed series, primarily featured in Assassin's Creed Black Flag. The Observatory's design aligns with the typical ezio architecture observed in other parts of the series, advanced, almost alien-like compared to human technology of any era. It was built deep within a secluded cave in Jamaica. This first civilization structure possessed the unique ability to spy on anyone, anywhere in the world, provided their blood sample was available. This was achieved through the use of a crystal skull, which served as the central component enabling the Observatory's surveillance capabilities. You see, at first, the Observatory was portrayed as a powerful and dangerous tool. In fact, it was so important that various factions, including the Templars and Assassins, as well as pirates like Edward Kenway, were drawn into a conflict over its control. The potential for misuse of such a device, essentially granting omnipresent surveillance powers, was so large and posed ethical questions, similar to modern day debates about privacy and security. However, after Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the Observatory was barely mentioned again in the games after. This lack of follow-through leads to several unanswered questions. For one, who ultimately controlled the Observatory after the events of Black Flag? If you think about it, the game ended with Edward Kenway and the Assassins sealing off the Observatory, but the long-term security of such a place was never addressed. While it's acknowledged that the Observatory was destroyed in the 18th century, imagine a storyline if it had not been, and Ubisoft had not written destruction into the lore. In a world where such a device exists, its security is a major issue that would realistically continue to influence events. There's also technological implications. For example, the technology behind the Observatory could have revolutionized the world if it was discovered by modern day factions within the Assassin's Creed universe, such as Abstergo Industries. The fact that this has not been explored suggests a missed opportunity to delve into the ramifications of such technology falling into the wrong hands. There's also the topic of moral dilemmas. The power to watch anybody in the world at any time raises some pretty interesting moral questions, which the series could have explored more in depth, especially through its modern day storyline. How would the Assassins and Templars with their differing philosophies handle such power? It's frustrating because this type of storyline could have been a central theme in later games, but for some reason Ubisoft decided to abandon it and just leave it as destroyed. And to me, that's just frustrating. I mean, it's a goddamn location where you can spy on anybody in the world at any time. Why on earth was that not being further explored in the games after Black Flag? There is some information about the Observatory after Black Flag that's not really shown in the games. So in 2013, an Abstergo Entertainment employee observed that while the Observatory's surveillance capabilities matched modern technology and were not of primary interest to the Templars, the site's blood vials could contain important First Civilization genetic material for analysis. The next year, Templar Otto Berg told his colleague Violet da Costa of his plans to excavate the Observatory. From May 25th to the 30th in 2014, Otto Berg led the excavation and discovered that the site had been intentionally buried by the Assassins for about 2 centuries earlier. He found that a major collapse in the 18th century had largely destroyed the Observatory. So I guess in the lore of the series, the Observatory was simply destroyed, which just sucks because to me it seemed like unused potential, especially of something that powerful. Ah yes, Pieces of Eden. Remember those? They used to be important for the lore of this franchise. We've got Apples of Eden, Crystal Skulls, and even this one, the Precursor Box. Now, if you're unaware as to what this particular Piece of Eden is, well, the Precursor Box is an ezio-created device that works with Pieces of Eden for various purposes, mainly to store extensive knowledge. Typically, these boxes are powered by a Piece of Eden, but can also use a high amount of electricity similar to a lightning strike. We first saw the Precursor Box way back in Assassin's Creed Embers, where an older retired ezio held onto it in Italy to then give to the Chinese assassin Xiao Jun. After that, the next time we saw the Precursor Box was in Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, where it was used as a tool tool in Adewale's quest to fight against slavery and injustice. We've also seen the Precursor Box throughout the story of Assassin's Creed Rogue, where Shay used it to project a map of ezio sites. The box was then secured by Achilles Davenport at the Davenport homestead. In 1759, Hope Jensen used the box to find an ezio temple in the Arctic. After that, the Precursor Box changed hands over the years, travelling from the French assassins in 1776 to the British Templar Francis Cotton, and eventually to William Sleeman in 1841, who used it to locate ezio temples in India. So it's pretty obvious that the Precursor Box played a role in a lot of other events. But after the Assassin's Creed Chronicles series, its presence was limited to the comics. It has not appeared in any Assassin's Creed game since then. This sudden disappearance from the games is a curious case, given the box has demonstrated such power and its potential to explore deeper storylines related to the first civilization technology and influence on historical events. I guess there are a few reasons why it was abandoned in the games. Maybe the shift in narrative towards more grounded historical stories with less emphasis on the modern day storyline, and the broader Assassin Templar conflict involving ezio artifacts plays a part in that. Or maybe the fact that the series has simply evolved and there's a greater focus on open world exploration and RPG elements, potentially sidelining ezio related plots, which might require a more linear storytelling approach to properly explore. So yeah, it's unfortunate that this piece of Eden is not shown anymore in the games. I'd love to see it return in a future game, potentially in Assassin's Creed Red. Who knows? Aita in Assassin's Creed lore served as an important figure within the lore as a scientist of the first civilization. His story is closely tied to the overarching narrative of Juno, whose plan was to resurrect him and restore the ezio to power. The storyline involving Aita's reincarnations is an often confusing narrative thread within the Assassin's Creed series that centers around the recurring resurrection of Aita, the husband of the ezio Juno. The storyline of Aita's reincarnations, and more broadly the plot surrounding Juno, was significantly developed throughout the series, hinting at a pretty climactic confrontation or integration into the main game's plot. Aita reincarnations have been a recurring element in the Assassin's Creed series, appearing in many various forms. In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, we encountered John Standish in the modern day as a sage of Aita. Other Aita sages include Bartholomew Roberts, also from Black Flag, Jacques Demolay from the prologue of Assassin's Creed Unity, Francois Thomas Germain, also from Assassin's Creed Unity, and even the Master Spy from the Lydia Fry missions in Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Clearly, the concept of Aita reincarnations was prominently featured in the earlier games, but why was it removed and where did it go? Well, to understand why the whole Aita reincarnation storyline was removed, we have to look at why it's even a thing in the first place, and that's primarily because of the ezio Juno. You see, Juno, who is important to the reincarnation of Aita, was simply moved to the comics for her ending. In the Assassin's Creed Uprising comic series, her plot is resolved with her ultimate defeat, which did not occur within the games. With her storyline concluding in these comics, the connected narrative of Aita's reincarnations also ceased to be a focal point in the games, leaving many of the hinted at storylines unexplored in the video games. To be fair, it's not even just Aita and Juno's storyline that was simply forgotten or abandoned. It's the whole ezio storyline in general. Remember Jupiter, remember Minerva, remember Saturn? These are first civilization characters explored in earlier Assassin's Creed games that just faded into obscurity. In fact, the last time we saw the ezio Minerva in an Assassin's Creed game was in Assassin's Creed 3. Well, you can say Valhalla, but that doesn't really count because she was reincarnated as Gunloader with the Norse storyline. So yeah, Aita Reincarnations is a storyline that was simply abandoned, and it's clear that this is the case. Okay, so now that I've gone over the 5 I wanted to discuss, there were honorable mentions that I could have included in the video, but maybe they're not as interesting as the ones in the main video. So the first is the storyline of the Phoenix Project. And this was an ambitious initiative by Abstergo Industries, aimed at sequencing the first civilization through advanced genetic technologies. It began following the discovery of something called triple helix DNA in the body of John Standish, a sage, suggesting a potential method to clone ezio beings and uncover the secrets of the Pieces of Eden. Despite its promising start and grand goals, the project encountered significant setbacks, most notably the destruction of its Paris facility by the assassins in 2014. This event severely hindered Abstergo's ability to continue the project as planned. Furthermore, the narrative surrounding the Phoenix Project gradually disappeared from the main story in general. Another honorable mention is Juno's storyline. Now, I've mentioned this specific part in past videos on this channel, so I'll briefly go over this. So in the early Assassin's Creed games, Juno emerged as a major antagonist from the first civilization, despite being set up as the main villain after Assassin's Creed 3. 3, her storyline unexpectedly shifted away from the video games entirely to the comic books. This move left many game-only players unaware of her ultimate fate. So after Desmond's sacrifice at the end of Assassin's Creed 3, which inadvertently releases Juno, the storyline sees her seeking a physical form to regain her power, assisted by a sage who is of course her husband Aita. Her story pretty much continues sporadically throughout the games until Assassin's Creed Syndicate, but pretty much ends in the Assassin's Creed Uprising comics. The last honourable mention I've gone with is the Erudito Collective. So Erudito, also known as the Erudito Collective, was a hacker group that challenged the Templar-run Abstergo Industries. This collective, made up of various independent members, aimed to uncover and reveal truths about Abstergo that they concealed. They operated through different channels, including emails, interacting with figures like Desmond Miles, and participants in Abstergo's projects. After a period of silence, Erudito re-emerged in 2016, though their objectives at this time were unclear. Historically, they had breached Abstergo's systems to leak protected information. They also introduced Erudito credits as an alternative currency and disrupted Abstergo's public Animus releases. Despite facing arrests and a decline in their activities, by 2016, Erudito was aiding the assassin Charlotte de la Cruz and had begun collaborating more directly with the assassins, forming an alliance by 2017. I guess Erudito's sudden fading from the storyline is similarly reflective of Ubisoft's often poor story choices, perhaps indicating a trimming of modern day storylines to streamline the main series. So there you have it. Those are 5 Assassin's Creed storylines that were abandoned, as well as some honourable mentions to include because why not? Let me know down in the comments below if you have another storyline that you might remember from the past games that's also abandoned or forgotten, just like many of these in the video. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And with that said, I'll see you in the next one.